helping boards catch the vision for better governance. Co-authors Dan Busby and John Pearson have written an engaging and powerful training tool, Lessons from the Church Boardroom, 40 Insights for Exceptional Governance. Join prolific authors and bloggers Dan and John as they share their expertise from several of the lessons. Our prayer is that this video will inspire your board and help you accomplish an even greater vision for good governance.
John, compensating the senior pastor at a church seems like such a basic process. Still, we hear of many churches that struggle with this important part of faithful administration. Time after time, we learn of churches that only give the senior pastor a cost of living increase and consider that good enough. Of course, a cost of living increase assumes that the salary for the previous year was adequate, and so often this is not the case. If the pastor was paid too little for the previous year and receives an inflationary adjustment, it means the pastor is still paid too little. John, there are so many questions about compensating the pastor and too few clear answers. What are the key questions that church boards should be asking?
Well, Dan, several questions come to mind, and I think there's at least 8, and these are, I'm sure, from your pen because you are such an expert on this whole issue of pastoral compensation. So let me just read them and take notes, church boards, because this will be on the test at the end. Number 1, how often should the board obtain compensation comparability data? Number 2, what is the best source of comparability data? 3, what types of fringe benefits are appropriate? 4, how much should be allocated to each of the fringe benefit categories? Hold on, there's 4 more, but don't underestimate the importance of each question. Number 5 is, if the senior pastor is the founding pastor of the church, should this impact the compensation planning? Great question. Number 6, should the senior pastor play any part in the compensation setting process? Number 7, should a compensation increase for the senior pastor be related to how the church is doing financially? And number 8, should the church board be aware of the compensation amounts paid to family members of the senior pastor? We won't cover all of these issues during this video. I'm guessing, though, Dan, that you have some relevant and tested principles that church boards should follow in setting the compensation of the senior pastor.
Well, John, that's a good guess. 6 principles that I think should be applied are: number 1, ensure that the senior pastor's compensation is reasonable. A pastor's compensation is rarely unreasonably high. More often, it's unreasonably low. Church boards should keenly focus on the compensation approval process. This is generally a larger issue than the amount of pay. And then number 2, annually review all elements of the senior pastor's compensation. Too often, the board focuses on compensation to the exclusion of fringe benefits. And then number 3, limit the pastor's role in the process. The pastor should not be involved in the compensation setting process except when the board discusses the adequacy of the compensation. And number 4, be informed about the compensation of family members. While the board would rarely approve the compensation of members of the pastor's family who are paid by the church, the board should be aware of those compensation packages. And number 5, use comparability data. At least every few years, the church should review comparative compensation data. And number 6, approve the compensation. The compensation package is often recommended by a board committee, but the ultimate decision on the package should generally be made by the full governing board.
Wrapping up this important topic, there is no question that senior pastors, church attenders, and members will deeply appreciate boards that address compensation setting with integrity and thoroughness. And here's an important motivation. Churches that do not compensate their current senior pastor adequately will have to play catch-up when setting the compensation of their next senior pastor. And all of this, of course, is part of the sacred trust that board members must affirm when they agree to serve on the church board.